Hi, everyone. This is Caroline with you. Thriving Abroad, the expat interviews is what I do. And I have the opportunity to travel all around the world and meet amazing people, families who are just doing amazing things in the travel space. And I'm so honored and so pleased to be able to chat today with one half of a very, very cool family who's doing so much out there. And I wanted to share them with you. Thank you. And she's a fellow Carolinian, I guess, because welcome, Caroline, to our expat interviews. So I
Thank you
wanted
for having me.
I love your story because you are you're an expat and you're now living in the U.S. So let's just go really briefly, leaving the beautiful Australia to live in the US. What was that like for you initially? Were you a traveler growing up as a child?
No, actually, my parents, we didn't have the means really to travel, so I didn't do a lot. And then my brother, my older brother, was really great at cricket and had the opportunity to live in London. And I heard so many of his stories of living in London and traveling Europe that I thought, oh my gosh, I really want to do that. So in 1997, I graduated from university as a teacher, and 3 days later, I went traveling. Pretty much been doing it ever since, and that was 23 years ago. So I've lived in London, Dublin, Bangkok, and then the USA. My husband and I came over here in 2004 on a cultural teaching exchange program, and just fell in love with living here. And it really, Raleigh, North Carolina really felt like home to us. So since then, we went on a very long journey to get the permission to live here permanently, which we got last year by way of a green card because of our travel blog. So we're here permanently now.
Congratulations.
Thank
Good for
you.
you. So I was very anxious to talk with you about travel with family. In
Mhm.
all of our series, we mostly talk with single travelers or just couples. And
Mhm.
I feel like it's really important that, a lot of people, because there may be so many people that have children and they're saying, oh my God, I just can't afford to do this. It's a lot of hassle. How have you have two children,
Mhm.
two girls,
Two girls,
and what are their ages?
13 and 9.
Okay, so they're at an age where maybe travel is fun to them. It's not like, maybe a teenager per se that, "Oh, my parents are dragging me around the world." But how has it been first I'll ask you, how has it been for them? What is their reaction to traveling?
Well, it's pretty much the only life they've known. We've been traveling with them since they were born. We did an 18-month road trip around Australia with them when they were 6 and 2. They did some, short trips to New Zealand, the Pacific Islands, and Asia while we were living in Australia. And then we came back over to the US in 2017. And so we've been traveling in the US on lots of short road trips. And we also did a 12-month RV trip. So it's pretty much all they know. And they both really love it. I know my youngest daughter, especially, she's 9. She frequently will start crying, especially this past year, because we're not traveling anymore and I
Oh.
really miss travel. So it's in their blood. They love the adventure. They love exploring different areas and the freedom that comes with it, connecting and meeting all sorts of people. They really love it. We'll see how it goes now that my eldest is a teenager. It's a different world, so we'll see how she starts to change. But we have a couple of trips planned in the next month, and they're both very excited to be traveling again.
A lot of families don't travel as much with children because, let's face it, financially, they feel that it's a
Mhm.
deterrent for them. Have you discovered travel hacks or resources for families that are traveling with children to help, ease the pocketbook a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, for us, one way we've always done it, even when I was solo travel, was to live in other countries or other areas and work as you're traveling. And there are, and so many, especially the past year, people have discovered, families especially, that you can actually work remotely and incorporate travel into your experiences that way. So if you're going to be earning money, why not earn it while you're traveling? Like it's you can do both. And I think that's the message we try and put forth, is to think creatively. So sometimes it might not be about hacking and finding the best deal. It might be about just creating more money to travel and find ways to work and travel. So that's one really big one that we do. Another big one is we travel slowly and we go in depth in one region at a time. So it's always more expensive if you're, like, say, bouncing from one country to another. So really concentrate your efforts into one area where you can reduce your high expenses, which is transport and accommodation. And so we look for things like Airbnb, apartment rentals, so that we, you know, stay there for a week or more at a time. We can use the amenities, cook our own food and all of that, because eating out with kids is really expensive. So if you can find ways to reduce that, one tip, look, if you're going to eat out, because we want to experience the food of the region that we're traveling in, go for breakfast or lunch, always cheaper than dinner. Plus, in our experiences, dinner with kids in a restaurant is a nightmare. They're usually very tired by that time and no one has a good time. So, you know, do your best to do breakfast and lunch, and that will save you money. Or you could look for early bird dinners as well, because you can find some really great deals on that. So there are a couple of tips. Camping, we love camping, kids love camping, and seeking adventure in the outdoors. That's one way that we save a lot of money, because the outdoors is free and you can go hike. You can have an amazing experience as a family just hiking, and you're out in nature. And one thing I've noticed, every single time we go out to do a hike, our kids will complain. So if you're traveling with kids, get used to it. They're going to complain about everything. But we discover 15 minutes into the hike, they start to relax and they start having fun with each other and laughing and talking and chasing one another. And by the end of it, they're like, oh, that wasn't too bad. I enjoyed that. It happens every single time. I call it the nature effect. There's just something about the nature that just calms them, relaxes them, and helps them to appreciate it and actually have a great time. And it's free.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. I worked for the Disney Corporation for a few years. I worked in one of the theme parks in Orlando. And what you were saying, it's so true. I mean, the kids, when it was time for dinner, I mean, and I worked in a restaurant also, and I got to see the kids. They were so restless and, you know, so bored. And I wondered, you know, and the parents had such a difficult time keeping them, you know, settled down. And what you said is so true. I feel like the freer, the more things that you can do outdoors and just be more relaxed, I feel like the better it is. Um, Traveling, not just with kids, but with a significant other. How has that been for both of you? I mean, or do you pretty much agree on things to do? Do you find things to do together that that satisfy both you as a couple and with the kids?
Yeah, I think we've been really good at finding the balance, and thankfully we like pretty much the same things. And I think we, from a young age, brought our children into those adventures and hobbies that we love. As I mentioned, being outdoors. Um, so I think, you know, when you're traveling, you want to always work together to make sure everyone's needs are covered. So we think about things that everybody likes to do, and then we make sure that it's covered throughout the trip. And if someone doesn't want to do something, generally they compromise and come and do it and have a great time. Or we can always do things like split up. So I know I just actually put an Instagram message update out yesterday where that happened once when we were traveling. The girls were really restless and tired. And so my husband took them for a play somewhere, and I went to this museum that I really wanted to go and experience. So there are ways that you can do that.
You have put together an amazing website, Why
Thank you.
Travel, and I was going through it and looking, and as I, had mentioned to you before our conversation, when I left the U.S. 13 years ago, there were very few resources for travelers, but you have just put an amazing site together. I mean, there's really, you've left no stone unturned as far as, good
Thank you.
information for someone that's looking to travel. And we're going to put a link to that here below so that others can enjoy some of the things. But what I enjoyed most about your website is you have some quotes there that really, really go deep, about the whole travel space, about it's not just, packing up your luggage and just going off. And, there's so much more to travel. Also, there's always that spiritual aspect of it. And, especially when you're traveling with family, I really love, reading such positivity and uplifting messages. I hope that many people will get an opportunity to read them and learn from it. The 55 lessons that you have that you've learned from a life of travel. It's really a very deep. So one of those quotes that I wanted to ask you about really quickly before we wind it down. There was one that you mentioned: the more we own, the more enslaved we become. And I love that quote because I have experienced that, as moving abroad, and you sell your things and you go somewhere else and you buy more things, and you go somewhere else and you buy more things. What has that been for you? How has that had meaning for you?
Well, I mean, I've been a nomad really for 23 years. So I was able to learn through experience that possessions mean nothing. And I remember so many times we backpacked through Africa for 6 months. And this was before digital cameras. Well, no, sorry. The digital cameras were there, but you had to put your photographs on like a CD, compact disc. And this was in Africa. And so we had our compact disc in our backpack because that's all we owned. It's all we could put it. And it snapped. And it was all of our photos of hiking, trekking with the gorillas, and spending the night with the Maasai warriors, and all these incredible experiences. And it was really heartbreaking, but it wasn't, I got over it, and then it was that, like, I think that was the most heartbreaking thing I could ever lose, because it was our memories.
Memories, sure.
And it wasn't, but then even I was able to detach and let that go. And that was a really empowering message, is like, none of it matters. You're going to move from moment to moment, and you don't need anything except the moment that you're in. And I think traveling helps you to understand that and disconnect from this feeling that this society is always telling you to own more, to keep up with the Joneses and the status quo. And you just don't need that when you're traveling, and you just take each moment from it for what it is, and you just realize that you're having so much fun. And that's the purpose of life, is to experience and express joy. And that rarely comes from stuff. I mean, we're settled in a house now, and I like nice things. You can see I've got some pretty wall hangings, but it's taught me to not over collect. And so everything we purchase is like, what's the real value in this? Am I going to use it? Will it bring me ease? Will it help me to do things? Like, it has to have a purpose. I don't unless it has a purpose. And that might be bring me joy, like a colorful painting on the background. But I think it forces you to evaluate every decision and to really understand, is this bringing value to my life in some form, comfort, ease, joy? If not, it's not necessary.
I love that. That's beautiful. That is so true for all of us that have lived abroad for many years. It's so true. One last thing, do you have any words of advice for any families that are considering moving, but they, besides going to your website, of course, but they're just mentally not ready to make that, to make that move? What small bit of advice would you give them?
I think turn to people who have done it and hear their story and learn from them, and to understand that they were once in the same position where they felt huge amounts of fear, and every day was a mental barrage of reasons why they couldn't do it, but they learned to quieten those voices of limitation and just take the leap and do it. And I think if they follow those stories, they'll discover that despite all the fear and the limitations and the reasons why they told themselves they couldn't do it, when they actually leaped, all of that fell away and they found ways to make it happen. And they'll never ever look back, and they'll always say it was the best decision they ever made. So just think about what are you going to miss out on by not taking the leap? What's going to change for you? You're just still going to be stuck in that world where you're wanting to do this, but not because you're telling yourself that you can't. So just change it and say, how can I instead?
Wow, those were powerful words. I love it. I love it. Wow. So how can we reach you? How can we connect with you?
Sure. So we're on Y Travel Blog is our website. That's the letter Y, Travel Blog. And then on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, it's at Y Travel Blog. Again, the letter Y.
Great. And we'll put the links to all of that below. Caroline, it has been such a pleasure to talk with you.
Caroline.
And all the best to you and Craig and your girls. And we're just excited to learn more about your travels in the future. And please continue to be the inspiration that you are for families that want to travel and learn more about this huge globe that we live in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Caroline, for having me. Thanks for everyone for listening.